So I just saw Music, the directorial debut from Sia. For those of you unaware, Sia is a musician who decided to try her hand at directing. She's been making this film since like 2016 and it's been in production since before then. Now, in terms of her music, Sia has a lot of stuff that just doesn't do it for me and a lot of stuff I dislike, but her best songs are genuinely incredible and she's very clearly talented, but unfortunately her talent does not remotely apply to filmmaking whatsoever, because even if you ignore everything harmful, ableist, and problematic in this movie, it is just a terrible debut. The majority of the movie is shot in handheld and it's very distracting and poorly done. The only real purpose it holds is to separate the real scenes from the music scenes, and even then it's not consistent in that. There are so many shots in this movie that would have been serviceable maybe if they had just used a tripod or something. And I say maybe because the angling they use in this movie is either uninspired or ugly. There are zero good framing choices in this entire movie, the whole thing just looks bad. None of the actors did a good job whatsoever, and the fact that Kate Hudson's performance in this has been nominated for a Golden Globe is genuinely embarrassing. And yet she is still not the worst choice in that category, cough cough worst movie of 2020. It's really not a good thing that Maddie Ziegler might have actually given the best performance in this movie. I mean, yeah, the performance was absolutely atrocious, but in comparison to literally everyone else here, it seemed like she was trying. And considering the whole situation with Maddie Ziegler and Sia, she is the only person attached to this movie I feel bad for. I hope she gets out of her toxic relationship with Sia, and I hope she gets to act in something good one day with someone who actually knows how to direct actors. Even if it turns out she's not a good actress, I would much rather she got another opportunity. Especially considering that you can very clearly tell that Sia does not know what she is doing at all. Apparently one of the hardest parts of making this movie was finding the right editor to get Sia's vision, and I guess they didn't find the right editor, did they? There are so many cuts in this movie where there do not need to be, and it is jarring every time. The audio editing is also messy, and in scenes that use dubs, the dubs are not exactly hidden. You can tell a lot of dialogue was recorded and edited in post, and it's very, very poorly done. It is genuinely kind of shocking how thrown together this movie feels. How did this film take so long to make? The music in this movie is an absolute disaster. Now, on the soundtrack of the film, Sia is singing all of the songs, but in the movie, it is also sung by Kate Hudson and Leslie Odom Jr. The songs are bad no matter who's performing them, but it's important to bring this up because the film uses this version and the soundtrack does not, so of course I'm going to be critiquing the film version. And also, the film features some songs which are not on the soundtrack, like the opening number Hey Boy, which is actually one of the worst songs I've ever heard. And fittingly, the scene in which it is performed in is one of the worst scenes I have seen in a film in a very long time, maybe even ever. I wonder why it's not on the soundtrack. But anyways, despite being a notably talented vocalist, Leslie Odom Jr. here is just the discount version of other people. There are multiple points where he needs to be a second-rate Labyrinth because Labyrinth is actually on the soundtrack version, and there are points where he is a second-rate Sam Smith, but like 2014 Sam Smith. Kate Hudson, on the other hand, is just not a distinct performer whatsoever. Why not just play the actual songs? There's only a couple of scenes where the singing is in the real world. Regardless though, there are no good songs and the musical score is also terrible. The musical sequences are all oversaturated and ugly. The Hey Boy one in particular just straight up hurt to watch. The cinematography and production design in the titular track sequence makes it all look so clumsy and bad. And these are the scenes which shouldn't be so hard for Sia because she is very clearly capable of making good music videos. And these sequences are basically just glorified music videos. But for this movie, she just dropped the ball. The costume design is bad, the hair and makeup is poorly done. Purely based on presentation, this film already gets nothing right. But then you have to deal with the script. So despite this being a movie about autism and the autistic character's name is the title of the movie, music is actually not the protagonist. Yep, she's a side character in her own story because we need to focus on Zoo, her half-sister who has to deal with the troubles of caring for her. She's also a recovering addict because she needs to have more struggles so that the audience can sympathize with her because on her own she's just really unlikable. We also focus more on her relationship with Ebo than her relationship with music because the film needs to show how her struggles with dealing with music music cause everything in her life to crumble. So already we're off to a bad start, but it's even worse because these characters are completely unlikable and stupid. There are situations they wind up in where all I was thinking was, just do this. It's not hard at all. It's really easy, actually. It is the first thing you should have thought of realistically. You can very clearly tell this was written by people who have no experience with anyone on the spectrum. But even past that, it's just stupid. Music has an allergic reaction to a bee and she has to go to the hospital, and so she and Zoo miss Ebo's boxing match thingy, and Zoo's so ashamed that she missed it and doesn't know what to say to him, so she gets drunk instead. Just call him and explain the situation. Ebo has been caring for music longer than you have been caring for music. Just fucking phone him. It was literally a life or death situation. What do you think he expects of you here? Just pick up the phone and fucking call him and tell him what happened. He will be understanding. It's not that hard. What did you think was going to fucking happen? Oh, what's that? The autistic child that I care a lot about was going to die, and so you had to take them to the hospital? Fuck that. Let them die. You missed my boxing match, bitch. There's also, obviously, the really harmful shit in this movie. A lot of the musical sequences, particularly the Hey Boy sequence, are likely going to cause sensory overloads in people who are actually on the spectrum. There's also some really concerning underlying implications about music and Ebo's relationship and how he views her. And of course, there is the restraint scenes. Yep, there's 2 of them, and they weren't taken out of the movie despite Sia saying they would be taken out of the movie. With the first one, Zoo is unfamiliar with the restraint, so she asks Ebo, hey, aren't you crushing music? And he responds by saying he's crushing her with love. And with the second one, it's in a public park and Zoo has to do it, so Ebo gives step-by-step instructions on how to properly do this restraint that could kill autistic people. It's absolutely fucking disgusting that these scenes are in the movie and that these scenes were ever in the movie. I don't give a shit if there wasn't enough time to remove the scenes, just delay the fucking film. I mean, yeah, I'd prefer you didn't release it at all, but I know you're going to, so just push it back. There is zero excuse for this. If Sia actually gave a shit and understood why this was wrong, she would not be releasing this film at all. She would have cancelled it. She would have pulled it entirely. Every action she has been taking is so blatantly just damage control. If she gave a shit, she wouldn't still be profiting off of the merch for this movie, which for some reason is still in stores, even though she apparently gets why it's wrong. Sia has a dangerous savior complex, and this film is a prime example of it. I shit you not, she even writes herself in as a cameo, and her whole reason for being there is basically to get drugs from Zoo so she can send a bunch of pain meds to where there's been a huge natural disaster in a place in the world where they don't have them, because she's such a great person. The only reason this movie exists is to fuel Sia's ego. It is fucking exhausting and agonizing to sit through, and I absolutely despise it with every fiber of my being. This movie actually reminds me a fair bit of The Fanatic, which was my least favorite film of 2019. They are both offensive movies about autism directed by musicians. Both movies feature neurotypical actors playing autistic characters. Both movies fucking suck. Of these 2 films, The Fanatic is absolutely worse. But if my comparison point for your film is The Fanatic, you are doing something horribly wrong. I genuinely hope this film ends Sia's career forever. Quite honestly, I will be perfectly content with a lot of the people involved with this movie having their careers fucked up because of this movie. I mean, yeah, I hope Maddie Ziegler gets another shot at some point, and I have a feeling that some of the people involved with the music did not know what it was for exactly, but everyone else here should have known better. It is very rare that I see a movie and I think, wow, I hope the director never works again, huh? I have seen a lot of bad debut films in my life. I have reviewed a fair few of them. And with nearly every director I've covered, I at least saw the potential. I will still keep an eye on a lot of those directors, whether or not they continue making bad movies. And I'll say it now, if Sia makes another film, I'll probably watch it. But as I already said, I hope this movie kills her career. I hope she's never given the chance to direct another film again. As someone who is on the autistic spectrum and has friends and family who are on the autistic spectrum, wholeheartedly fuck this movie. Fuck Sia, fuck Autism Speaks, fuck this god-awful piece of shit movie. And I'm giving music a 0 out of 10. That's the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe, and bad outros, and I'll see you in whatever I do next.